My name is Evelyn Davis. I am 68 years old. I am a widow, and for most of my life, I was the silent pillar of a family that never noticed how much weight I carried for them. I built a life alongside my late husband, Charles Davis, a technology pioneer who transformed Silicon Valley with his innovations, and when he died, he left me his fortune, more than $5 billion, money that was supposed to protect me in my old age, not turn me into prey. From the window of my estate in Marine County overlooking the bay, I watched the sun turn the terracotta tiles to gold. We bought this house when Sarah, our only daughter, was just 5 years old. Charles used to say that good investments start with a home where memories can take deep roots. The century-old olive trees surrounding the property have witnessed birthdays, graduations, Sarah's wedding, and also Charles's funeral. That day, as the mahogany casket descended into the earth at the memorial park, I noticed something unsettling in my daughter's eyes. It was not just grief, it was calculation. Charles died 6 years ago from a sudden heart attack. Back then, Sarah was 36 and already married to Richard, a man with wide smiles and eyes that never quite smiled along. Charles never fully trusted him, but I tried my best to see the good in the man my daughter had chosen. "Mom, are you taking your meds?" Sarah's voice interrupts my thoughts as she walks into the living room, without knocking as always. I turn to look at her. At 42, Sarah has inherited my dark hair. Now, with some premature gray strands, she dyes religiously, and Charles's dark eyes. But there is something in her expression I do not recognize, something that comes from neither of us. "I do not need those pills, Sarah. Dr. Foster prescribed them for no reason. I am perfectly lucid." Sarah sighs with that rehearsed exasperation she has perfected over the last few years. "That is strange, Mom, Doctor. Foster is one of the best neurologists in the state. If he says you need medication for your memory, you should listen to him. I do not mention that I sought a second opinion in secret, that Dr. Adams at Stanford Hospital assured me my mind is as sharp as ever. I do not mention it because I have learned to keep my cards close to my chest." Richard appears in the doorway in his impeccable suit and his Swiss watch that costs more than the car he drives. "Evelyn, you look great today," he says with that voice he uses for potential clients at his investment firm, a firm always on the verge of failure. "Have you thought about our proposal? That is what they call their plan to sell this house to simplify my life. Move me into a condo in the city that they would manage while they protect my assets. I'm still considering it," I reply, although we both know it is a polite lie. Charles built a tech empire from zero. He arrived in California from a small town in the Midwest with barely a suitcase and a brilliant idea about semiconductors when no one was betting on technology. He worked 18 hours a day for decades, and I was by his side, abandoning my career as a university literature professor to support his dreams, to raise Sarah, to build the charitable foundation that now bears his name. I would not hand over that legacy to a son-in-law who changes investments like he changes shirts, and to a daughter who has forgotten the values we tried to instill in her. At night, when the house falls silent, I review the documents Charles left in the safe. Wills, trusts, instructions. "Take care of yourself, Evelyn," he wrote in an attached note. "Not everyone will see the value of what we have built beyond the money. A month ago, I discovered someone had tried to access the safe. The marks were subtle but unmistakable. I said nothing. I only changed the combination and moved the most important documents to a bank safety deposit box in the name of my old friend, Linda. The only person I trust fully now. Linda and I studied together at Berkeley nearly 50 years ago. While I chose literature, she went into law. She became a respected human rights attorney before retiring. Now she lives in a farmhouse near Lake Tahoe, where she grows grapes and writes her memoirs. I never trusted Richard. Linda told me the last time we spoke on the phone. He has the eyes of a starving fox. Sarah and Richard visit more and more frequently, always with questions about investments, documents, properties, always worried about my well-being, but never interested in my stories, my opinions, or my days. Last week I found Richard going through my study when he thought I was in the garden. He jumped when he saw me. "I was just looking for that book you recommended." he said, even though I have never recommended a book to him. He reads nothing but financial reports. That night I called Linda. "Be careful, Evelyn," she warned me. "Greed is a slow poison, but a deadly one." The phone rings on a Tuesday morning. The caller ID shows Sarah's name. I hesitate before answering, counting my breaths as my therapist taught me, who I visit in secret. Mom. Her voice sounds strangely sweet, almost cloying. "Good morning." "Hi, honey," I reply, maintaining a neutral tone. "I have a surprise for you," she says with enthusiasm. "Richard and I want to do something special for your birthday. We have renovated the house at Lake Tahoe. Remember the one you and Dad bought when I was little?" My heart skips a beat. Of course I remember that house. A refuge of stone and timber in the mountains, near the lake. Charles bought it when his company started to take off. We spent every winter there teaching Sarah to ski, lighting the fireplace, telling stories under wool blankets while the snow fell softly outside. After Charles died, I never went back. The memories were too intense, too painful. We have renovated it completely. Sarah continues. "We want you to come and spend a few days with us, just the three of us, like in the old days." Something in her tone unsettles me. It is too calculated, too rehearsed. Sarah was never a good actress. Even in school, plays her fakeness was obvious. "That is very considerate of you," I reply cautiously. "When were you thinking of going this weekend?" "Richard has canceled all his meetings and I took a few days off from the agency. It will be perfect. Mom, you deserve it." While Sarah keeps talking about the renovation and the plans, my mind travels to the past. Sarah was 10 the first time we visited that house. Charles had just closed his first big international contract and wanted to celebrate away from the noise of the city. I remember Sarah running through the halls, discovering every corner, fascinated by the history of the building. "This house is almost 100 years old," Charles explained to her. "During the Prohibition era, the family who owned it built a shelter under the basement, a secret space to hide if things got difficult." Sarah was fascinated. She spent days exploring the basement looking for the entrance to the secret shelter. Finally, Charles showed her the mechanism, a bookshelf that rotated when you pressed a specific spot on the stone wall. The space was small, but functional, with ventilation that led outside through ducts hidden between the walls. "Why are you showing me this?" Daddy Sarah asked. "Because family secrets should only be shared with those who will value their importance," Charles replied. "This place saved lives. You never know when a shelter might be necessary." I return to the present when I realize Sarah has stopped talking and is waiting for an answer. "Mom, are you still there? Will you come?" A part of me wants to reject the invitation, the prudent part. The one that has noticed the looks between Sarah and Richard, the one that has seen moved documents on my desk, the one that has heard conversations cut short abruptly when I enter a room. But another part, the mother who still hopes to reconnect with her only daughter, who yearns to feel that bond again that has deteriorated over the years. That part nods. "Yes, I will go," I say finally. "Wonderful," Sarah exclaims. "We will pick you up Friday morning. Do not worry about anything. We have everything ready." After hanging up, I stare out the window watching the olive trees sway their silver leaves in the bay breeze. I cannot help but remember a conversation I had with Sarah when she was a teenager sitting right under those same trees. "Why are you and Dad always so busy?" she asked me, with that teenage bitterness I never knew how to handle well. "Other moms are home making cookies, attending school meetings. Your father and I are building something important," I replied. "Something that will protect you always." "I do not want protection," she snapped. "I want parents who are present." I never forgot those words, even when we tried to compensate, when we cut back work hours, when we created family traditions like the winters at Tahoe. I felt something had broken, that Sarah held a resentment neither Charles nor I knew how to heal. It is that resentment I see now in her eyes when she talks about helping me with my finances. It is revenge for those years we prioritized work over her daily life. I pick up the phone and dial Linda's number. I am going to Lake Tahoe with Sarah and Richard this weekend. I tell her without preamble. "Are you sure that is a good idea?" The concern in her voice is evident. "No, I am not. but I need to know what they are planning. Be careful, Evelyn. If anything does not seem right, call me immediately. I have an old friend near Truckee, James Miller, an ex-police detective. I will give you his number just in case. Thank you, Linda. You always look out for me. That is what friends are for. Besides, someone has to watch those vultures. After speaking with Linda, I go to my bedroom and open the closet. In the back, wrapped in silk, is an object Charles gave me for our 20th anniversary. A gold pocket watch, a family heirloom that belonged to his grandfather. Time is the only treasure that really matters. Evelyn, he told me when he gave it to me, and every second with you has been the best use of mine. I take it in my hands, feeling its weight, its history. I decide I will take it with me to Tahoe. A talisman, a reminder of who I am and everything Charles and I built together. I also packed discreetly a small digital recorder I bought months ago when the suspicions started to form. I hide it in the false bottom of my vanity bag, along with James Miller's number and a copy of the keys to Linda's house. I do not know what to expect from this trip, but I have learned that preparation is never wasted. As Charles used to say, prevention is the best strategy, in business and in life. And as I close the suitcase, I cannot help but wonder if this visit to our old family refuge will be a reunion or a trap. The trip to the mountains happens in an uncomfortable silence. Richard drives his latest model Range Rover along the highway while Sarah works on her tablet, throwing me occasional glances in the rearview mirror. I pretend to sleep, but under my half-closed eyelids, I watch every gesture, every complicit look between them. As we leave the coast behind and ascend toward the mountains, the air becomes crisper and cleaner. The oaks give way to pines, and the sky seems closer, more intense in its blue. "We are almost there, Mom," Sarah announces with a joy that does not reach her eyes. "Wait until you see the changes. You are going to love it." The dirt road leading to the house has been paved. The trees that flanked it, where Charles used to hang lights at Christmas, have been pruned with excessive precision, losing their wild character. There is nothing organic left, nothing that speaks of life growing freely. When the vehicle stops in front of the house, my heart contracts. The natural stone facade that Charles loved so much has been covered with modern stucco. The wooden windows have been replaced by wide aluminum panes. Even the door, that sturdy hand-carved century-old door, has disappeared in favor of a minimalist structure of glass and metal. What do you think? Richard spreads his arms with pride. We have invested almost $300,000 in the renovation. Now it is truly a house worthy of the 21st century. I swallow hard, unable to express the loss I feel. It is not just a renovation. It is a systematic erasure of our memories. It is different. I manage to articulate while Richard takes my suitcase from the trunk. Sarah takes me by the arm with fake sweetness. "Let us go inside. It is cold out here. The interior is even more baffling. Where there were once antique wooden floors, now shines a cold and impersonal marble. The rustic furniture Charles and I had carefully selected from antique shops all over the state has disappeared, replaced by angular and sterile designer pieces. The walls previously decorated with family photos and paintings by local artists now exhibit abstract art that says nothing. That tells no story. We threw away all that old furniture. Sarah comments while guiding me through the living room. It was full of dust and mites. It was not healthy, especially for someone your age. I stop in front of the fireplace, the only thing that seems to have survived the transformation, although now it is surrounded by a stainless steel structure that robs it of all its warmth. "Where is your grandmother's blanket?" I ask, referring to the handmade quilt that always rested on the sofa near the fireplace, the one she knitted when she was pregnant with your father. Sarah and Richard exchange a quick glance. "Oh, that old thing," Sarah replies with disdain. "It was frayed and stained. We donated it along with everything else. They donated it. A family heirloom with more than 70 years of history discarded as if it were trash. I feel something break inside me, but I keep my face impassive. This is not the moment for confrontations. "Your room is upstairs," Sarah continues. "We have adapted it to be more comfortable and safe. We even installed grab bars in the bathroom." She guides me upstairs to what used to be the master bedroom I shared with Charles. Opening the door, I barely recognize the space. The carved bed we bought on our trip to Europe has been replaced by a hospital-like structure with electric controls and side rails. The armoire where we kept our books has vanished. The lace curtains that filtered the morning sun have been replaced by automatic blinds. It is like being in a clinic, I murmur, unable to stop myself. It is the ultimate in comfort for seniors, Richard replies from the doorway. Safety first. Evelyn. I leave my suitcase on the bed and notice a brochure on the nightstand. I take it surreptitiously while Sarah shows me the new bathroom. The heading freezes my blood. Neuropsychological evaluation patient, Evelyn Davis. It is a medical report I do not recognize, signed by Dr. Elena Foster, detailing alleged episodes of confusion, memory loss, and disorientation that I have never experienced. I hide it quickly in my pocket when Sarah returns. Rest a little before dinner, she says. Richard has prepared something special. When they leave, I lock the door and examine the room methodically. I find a tiny camera installed in the corner of the ceiling, partially hidden by a lamp, another in the bathroom above the mirror. I sit on the bed pretending to check my phone while my mind processes what is happening. It is not paranoia. They are building a case of mental incapacity against me, documenting every movement, every word, every gesture they can use to declare me incompetent. I turn on the bathroom faucet to mask any sound and take the small recorder out of my vanity bag. I activate it and hide it among my clothes inside the closet. Then, using the technique my therapist taught me, I breathe deeply 3 times to calm my racing heart. Think like Charles, I tell myself. Observe, analyze, plan. Do not react hastily. When I go down for dinner, I find Richard opening a bottle of red wine in the totally renovated kitchen. The aroma of roast lamb fills the air, reminding me of the meals Charles used to cook here. Although now everything seems to come from stainless steel appliances that have never known the warmth of loving hands. Napa Valley Reserve, Richard announces, showing me the label. Your favorite right. Actually, I prefer white wine. Charles was the fan of Cabernet. It is a small detail, but revealing of how much they really do not know me. Thank you, I reply, accepting the glass he offers. During dinner, I maintain a superficial conversation talking about safe topics, the weather, the news, harmless anecdotes from my youth. But I watch how Sarah discreetly documents every bite I take with her phone under the table, how Richard constantly refills my glass while barely touching his. How about we review some papers after dinner, Richard suggests casually. There are some interesting investments I wanted to show you. I am quite tired, I reply. Maybe tomorrow, with a clearer mind. It would only take a few minutes. He insists, and I notice a slight tone of impatience. There are opportunities that do not wait. Evelyn, Richard is worried about the situation of the foundation. Sarah intervenes. Some of the trustees have taken questionable decisions. We think you should consider a change of direction. The Charles Davis Foundation, dedicated to tech scholarships for underprivileged youth, is perhaps the achievement Charles was proudest of. He left specific instructions about its management, with a board composed of his most trusted colleagues. The last financial report showed excellent results. I respond, maintaining my casual tone. Scholarships increased 15% this year, but they could do much more, Richard says, leaning forward. With a more progressive management, I translate mentally. Under my control, to get to the millions in the Foundation's fund. It is something to consider carefully, I say evasively. Charles had very specific ideas about the Foundation. Charles is no longer here. Sarah sentences with a coldness that startles me. And with all due respect, Mom, his economic ideas are from another era. The world has changed. I take a sip of wine to hide my reaction. The Charles that Sarah describes, a man with outdated ideas, is not the visionary who revolutionized the tech industry, who predicted the rise of artificial intelligence when others still doubted the internet. The conversation drifts toward safer topics, but the damage is done. The mask has fallen momentarily, revealing their true intentions. They do not want me here to celebrate my birthday. They want me here for something much more sinister, while Sarah serves dessert. A homemade flan that I know she bought at some bakery, although she claims to have made it herself. I notice I struggle to keep my eyes open. An unusual drowsiness invades me, considering I have barely drunk half a glass of wine. "Are you okay, Mom?" Sarah asks with theatrical concern. "You look pale. I am a little tired," I reply, fighting against the heaviness of my eyelids. "I think I will go up to rest. I will walk you up." She offers, taking my arm with excessive firmness. As we climb the stairs, the world seems to sway slightly. My mind, although numbed, registers the certainty. They put something in my food or my drink, something to make me sleep deeply, to make me vulnerable. In the room, Sarah helps me sit on the bed with exaggerated solicitude. "Rest, Mom. Tomorrow will be an important day." When she leaves, I fight against the stupor to activate the recorder and place it under the pillow. Then I pretend to sleep deeply while I listen to footsteps going up and down, murmuring voices, doors opening and closing, through the fog induced by what I suspect is a sedative in my wine. I hear fragments of conversation from the hall. "Are you sure it will work?" Sarah's voice tense and nervous. "The doctor, Norton, guaranteed it," Richard replies. "No one will question anything. Everything is ready, and Alexander will have the documents ready for Monday. Once we have the death certificate, everything will be legally ours." Their voices drift away, but the pieces begin to fit together in my numb mind. It is not just a strategy to control my fortune. It is something more definitive, more permanent. I fight against the heaviness of my limbs to stay conscious, remembering Charles's words. In critical moments, mental clarity is your best ally. And as the night advances and the house falls silent, I understand with terrible clarity that this renovation was not for my comfort. This house is not a refuge. It is a trap. I wake up with the first light of dawn, my head throbbing, as if I had drunk 3 bottles of wine instead of half a glass. The effects of the sedative are still present, but my mind is clear enough to remember the fragmented conversations from last night. I move slowly, conscious of the cameras documenting every action. I perform a convincing morning routine, even stumbling slightly when entering the bathroom to feed the narrative of deterioration they are building. I go down the stairs, carefully listening to the sounds of the house. The silence is absolute. Sarah and Richard must still be sleeping. It is my opportunity to explore. The modernized kitchen retains little of its original warmth. I search for signs of what they might have used to drug me, but the dishes are impeccably clean. The trash empty. Richard has been meticulous. I slip toward the study, formerly Charles's sanctuary. Now it is a sterile space with a glass desk and minimalist shelving. The family photos have disappeared. The books Charles treasured, replaced by insipid decorations and Richard's awards. The office door is locked, but I remember Charles always kept a copy under the top molding of the frame. I check, and surprisingly, it is still there. Some things are too insignificant to be noticed even during a radical renovation. Inside, I find a desk organized with military precision. On the computer screen, a screensaver shows photos of Sarah and Richard on various luxury trips, yachts in the Mediterranean, skiing in the Alps, dinners at Michelin star restaurants. A life of opulence built with Charles's money, but without a single photo of him or me. I open the drawers stealthily. The first contains ordinary office supplies. The second is empty. The third is locked. Using a hairpin from my hair, a trick I learned from a mystery novel, I managed to open it after several attempts. Inside, I find a folder labeled Project Phoenix. I open it with trembling fingers, and what I read freezes my blood. It is a detailed plan, almost clinical, to declare me mentally incompetent. It includes falsified medical reports from Dr. Foster describing severe cognitive deterioration, prepared testimonies from concerned friends I have never met, even manipulated photographs showing me in states of confusion. But the most disturbing thing is the timeline. According to the document, my fatal accident is scheduled for tomorrow night. Accidental fire caused by patient with dementia who forgot to turn off the stove. Leaves carbonized remains difficult to identify. Witnesses, Sarah daughter and Richard son-in-law, who tried to rescue her without success. My heart beats so fast I fear it can be heard throughout the house. It is not paranoia. It is not confusion. It is a meticulously crafted murder plan. I continue reviewing the folder and find similar documents about other cases. A 72-year-old widow in San Francisco who accidentally drowned in her pool after signing everything to her nephew. A retired businessman who suffered a tragic accident at his country house, leaving his fortune to a son who had not spoken to him in years. All the cases have connections to the New Horizons Institution run by Dr. Victor Norton, a name Richard mentioned last night. All involve greedy relatives, falsified medical documents, and convenient deaths. I take photos of every page with my phone, making sure to capture every detail. Then I return the folder exactly as I found it and close the drawer. Leaving the office, I hear voices approaching. Sarah and Richard are awake. Quickly, I head to the living room, pretending to examine the new furniture when they enter. "Good morning." "Mom," Sarah says with a smile I now recognize as completely fake. "Did you sleep well like a log?" I reply, imitating her falseness. "Must be the mountain air." Richard watches me carefully, probably looking for signs of the sedative. "You look better than yesterday," he comments. "More. Rested. I feel renewed." I reply, holding his gaze, as if I see things with greater clarity. A flash of uneasiness crosses his face before he recovers his professional smile. "Perfect. I thought we could review some documents this morning before lunch." "Of course." I accept with fake enthusiasm. It is always good to have everything in order. Sarah makes coffee in the kitchen while Richard spreads documents on the dining table. They are papers from the foundation property transfers and a document I recognize as a general power of attorney that would legally declare me incompetent to handle my affairs. It is just a precaution. Richard explains with the condescension he reserves for those he considers inferior. "In case one day you need help with important decisions." "I understand," I say, pretending to review the documents. I guess one never knows what might happen. "Exactly." He smiles, clearly relieved by my apparent docility. It is what Charles would have wanted. Mentioning Charles is a strategic error. An authentic pain goes through my chest. Charles always thought of everything. I reply, maintaining my voice steady. He had a gift for anticipating. Problems. Sarah returns with the coffee. I watch how she serves the cups, noticing mine comes from a different pot. Another dose of sedative. Without a doubt. I should review these papers carefully, I say, gathering the documents. "Do you mind if I take them upstairs?" I concentrate better in silence. Richard seems momentarily thrown off by my initiative. "There is no rush, Evelyn. We can review them together." I insist, keeping my tone light but firm. I have always been meticulous with contracts. Charles used to say I had an eagle eye for small clauses. Sarah and Richard exchange a look I cannot fully interpret. "Okay," Sarah finally concedes. "Take your time. We will be preparing lunch." I go up to my room, lock the door, and examine the documents closely. They are exactly what I suspected. A legal web to strip me of all control over my life and assets. The notary's signature, Alexander Scott, looks vaguely familiar. After a moment, I remember. He was a young lawyer Charles fired for ethical irregularities. I take more photos of the documents, and then in the bathroom with the water running to mask the sound, I send everything to Linda, along with an urgent message. Plan in motion. Accident scheduled for tomorrow. New Horizons Institution involved. Dr. Norton. Contact James. I barely finish sending the message when I hear footsteps approaching. I hide the phone and leave the bathroom to find Sarah at the bedroom door. Lunch is almost ready. She announces, "Richard has prepared his specialty wild mushroom risotto." "Sounds delicious." I reply, "I will be down in a moment." When she leaves, I check the documents one last time before going down. I am not going to sign anything, of course, but I need to buy time. I need a strategy to survive until I can escape this deadly trap. During lunch, I maintain a trivial conversation while ingeniously avoiding eating or drinking anything. I pretend to bring the spoon to my mouth, but drop small amounts of food into my napkin. When Richard is not looking, I empty part of my wine into a nearby plant. These documents are quite complex. I comment after dessert, which I have also avoided consuming. I think I need to consult with my financial advisor before signing. Richard's face tenses visibly. There is no need to involve third parties. Evelyn, it is a family matter. Still, I insist softly. Charles always said measure 7 times, cut once. My father is dead, Sarah interrupts sharply. And frankly, Mom, we are worried about your capacity to make financial decisions. Dr. Foster has warned us about the first signs of dementia you have been showing. What signs would those be? I ask, keeping my voice calm, although my pulse accelerates. Forgetting appointments, confusing names. Sometimes you get disoriented in familiar places. Sarah enumerates, clearly repeating a rehearsed script. Last week, the housekeeper found you in the garden at midnight, in pajamas, talking to yourself. It is an absolute lie. My housekeeper Lucy has been working with me for 15 years and is completely loyal. She would never say such a thing because it never happened. I do not remember that. I say pretending confusion to play along. See? Sarah looks at Richard with theatrical concern. She does not even remember her episodes. It is exactly what the doctor said. Richard nods solemnly, interpreting his role of concerned son-in-law to perfection. We just want the best for you, Evelyn. You cannot keep living alone, handling properties and complex accounts. It is too much stress at your age. The condescension in his tone is almost unbearable, but I keep my expression neutral, even a little confused while I evaluate my options. My phone vibrates in my pocket. Discreetly, I check it under the table. It is a message from Linda. James on the way. Stay safe until tomorrow. Do not sign anything. Do not eat or drink anything they offer. I look up to find Richard watching me intensely. Everything okay, Evelyn? Perfectly. I smile, just checking the time. I like to keep a routine. After lunch, while Sarah and Richard argue in low voices in the kitchen, I slip to the front door to check my escape options. It is locked, and I cannot find the key anywhere. The first-floor windows have new security systems I do not recognize. I am effectively trapped in this house that was once my refuge and is now my prison. I return to the living room and find Richard coming out of the kitchen. I thought we could take a walk this afternoon, I suggest. I would like to see how the forest has changed. I do not think that is a good idea. He replies quickly. The trail is very uneven after the recent rains. You could fall. But the exercise would do me good. I insist. Evelyn. His tone hardens slightly. At your age and with your condition, it is not safe. We can enjoy perfectly from the terrace. In that moment, I understand they will not allow me to leave the house under any circumstances. The plan requires the accident to happen here in this isolated house, far from possible witnesses. I understand, I say with fake resignation. I guess you are right. I spend the rest of the afternoon pretending to read a book while I watch Sarah and Richard. They move around the house with barely disguised attention, exchanging looks and whispers when they think I do not see them. Occasionally, Richard checks his phone impatiently, as if waiting for an important confirmation. When night falls, I notice a subtle smell of gas in the kitchen. The accident seems to be scheduled for tonight, not tomorrow, as the document indicated. They have accelerated the plan, perhaps sensing my resistance to sign the papers. During dinner, I maintain my strategy of not consuming anything. This time it is harder because Richard watches every bite with almost clinical attention. I fake a small choking fit that allows me to discreetly spit the food into a napkin. I think I will go to sleep early, I announce after dinner. It has been a long day. I will walk you up. Sarah offers immediately. In the room, while Sarah pulls back the bedspread with exaggerated solicitude, I notice she has left a glass of water on the nightstand, probably with more sedatives. Do you need anything else, Mom? She asks with that fake sweetness I have come to despise. I am fine, honey. Good night. When she leaves, I wait 10 minutes in case she comes back to check. Then quickly I change the sheets to create the impression of a body sleeping and place my phone under the pillow, programmed to play sounds of soft breathing. I slip silently to the closet and extract the small flashlight I packed carefully. Then, with the stealth I learned in my years exploring archaeological sites with Charles, I head toward the stairs leading to the basement. The basement is the only space they have not renovated completely, perhaps because the old foundation was too solid to modify, or perhaps because this space did not figure in their plans for the accident. I searched the stone wall for the secret mechanism Charles showed Sarah so many years ago. I press the exact spot, and after a moment of resistance, the shelf slides slightly, revealing a dark space behind. As I prepare to enter the shelter, I hear footsteps upstairs and heated voices. Richard sounds agitated. "It has to be tonight," he says. Norton says the window of opportunity is perfect. No one will question an accident here in an old house with a confused elderly woman. But she has not signed the documents. Sarah objects, her voice tense with worry. Alexander says we can use previous signatures. He has enough samples for forgery. The important thing is she does not leave here alive. A shiver runs down my spine hearing these words. It is not just greed. It is a calculated cruelty I never imagined in my own daughter. And if something goes wrong, Sarah's voice trembles slightly. Nothing will go wrong. The certainty in Richard's voice is terrifying. The gas is already leaking. A small spark in the kitchen and everything will look like a tragic accident. By the time the fire department arrives, there will be nothing left to investigate. Their footsteps head toward the stairs, probably to check if I am asleep. It is now or never. I slip inside the secret shelter, closing the shelf behind me. The space is small and dusty, but it has ventilation ducts leading outside. Charles had insisted on keeping it functional, just in case. Although he never specified what case he contemplated, I now understand his vision will save my life. From my hiding place, I hear Richard and Sarah go up the stairs, checking my room. Their voices sound muffled, but distinguishable. "She is fast asleep," Sarah says. "We can proceed." "Good," Richard replies. "Once it is done, we will call emergency services. Remember, we tried to save her, but the fire spread too fast." Their steps move away. Minutes later, I perceive a stronger smell of gas, followed by the sound of doors closing. They are sealing the house, preparing the stage for the tragedy. In the darkness of the shelter, I clutch Charles's pocket watch against my chest and wait, counting the seconds, preparing for the moment they will try to erase me from the world. They do not know the fire they have planned will not consume me. It will only light the path to justice. Time takes on a strange quality inside the secret shelter. The minutes stretch like hours as I listen to Paula and Richard moving through the house, finalizing the preparations for my death. The smell of gas intensifies, seeping even through the walls of the hideout. My breathing becomes shallow to avoid inhaling too much. The flashlight remains off. I cannot risk the light leaking through some invisible crack. The sounds upstairs change. I hear Richard talking on the phone, his voice tense but controlled. "Yes, doctor, everything is ready. It will look completely accidental. No, there will be no evidence left." "Yes, the documents are ready for Monday. I understand. Your commission will be transferred as agreed. Every word confirms what I already suspected. This is not a plan improvised by my daughter and her husband. It is part of something bigger, an organized system to eliminate wealthy seniors and redistribute their fortunes." I hear footsteps approaching the basement. I remain completely motionless, controlling even my breath. The basement door opens, and Richard's voice floats down from above. "Check the main gas valve. I want it to look like she tried to turn on the old heater and caused a leak." Sarah's footsteps come down the stairs. She stops so close to my hiding place I can hear her breathing. For a terrible moment, I fear she remembers the secret shelter, that she decides to check if I'm hiding here, but she heads directly toward the old boiler in the opposite corner. I hear the metallic sound of tools, probably manipulating the gas connections. "Ready," she says finally. The main valve is loose enough. Any investigator will conclude she tried to light it and cause the leak. Her footsteps return toward the stairs but stop abruptly in front of the shelf hiding my shelter. My heart stops. "Do you remember this place?" Richard's voice from above. "Yes," Sarah replies, and for the first time I detect something like doubt in her voice. "Dad showed me this shelter when I was little. He said it saved lives during the Cold War. Is there any chance your mother remembers it?" A silence. "No," Sarah says finally. "She barely remembers what she ate yesterday. She will not remember a hiding place we have not mentioned in years. The irony is almost painful. The only reason I am alive is because I remember perfectly this shelter my own daughter believes I have forgotten." Sarah goes up the stairs and closes the basement door. I hear their voices discussing the last details. "How long will it take?" Sarah asks. 20 minutes for the gas to reach optimal levels. Then, the programmed spark in the kitchen. The fire will spread quickly through the house, By the time we arrive with the fire department, there will be nothing recognizable left. And if she survives somehow, the doubt in Sarah's voice is evident. Impossible. Richard's assurance is chilling. The gas concentration will be lethal even before the fire. And if by some miracle she survives the doctor, Foster will testify about her advanced dementia. No one will believe her version. I hear the sound of the front door opening and closing. They are gone, leaving me to die in a house turned into a time bomb. I act quickly. The shelter has a ventilation duct that, as I remember from Charles's explanations, leads outside. It is partially blocked by years of disuse, but with determination, I manage to clear it enough to get fresh air. Through a small crack in the wall, I watch as the basement begins to fill with smoke. The fire has started. I hear the crackle of wood upstairs, the collapse of structures, the growing roar of the flames. The heat intensifies even inside the shelter. Drops of sweat slide down my face as I calculate my options. The shelter will protect me from the initial fire, but eventually the smoke could filter in lethal quantities, or the heat could become unbearable. I remember Charles mentioned the shelter had a secondary exit, a trap door leading to a short tunnel to the outside. I search for it desperately in the dark, feeling every inch of the floor until my fingers find a metal ring. I pull with all my strength, and a trapdoor opens, revealing a narrow passage. Without hesitating, I crawl inside on hands and knees. The tunnel is narrow and partially obstructed by roots and debris, but I advance with determination, driven by the will to survive. After what seems like hours, but probably are only minutes, I feel fresh air on my face. The exit is blocked by dense bushes, but I manage to push through them. Emerging finally several yards from the burning house, I crawl to a group of nearby trees and turn to watch the infernal spectacle. The house that was once our family refuge is completely engulfed in flames, an orange glow against the night sky. The windows explode from the heat, sending fragments of glass in all directions. In the distance, I hear sirens approaching. Sarah and Richard have raised the alarm, arriving as desperate rescuers to find the poor old woman trapped in the fire. I cannot stay here. If they discover me, they will try to finish what they started. With my body aching and my clothes stained with dirt and soot, I enter the forest, orienting myself by the stars, as Charles taught me during our hikes. I walk for hours in the darkness, using the flashlight only when absolutely necessary to conserve the battery. The forest near Tahoe is dense but beautiful even at night. In other circumstances, I would have appreciated its majesty. Now, it only represents my escape route. I have a destination in mind. Linda's house in the outskirts of Truckee. It is about 12 miles away. Too far to walk in one night, but I need to get as far away as possible from the accident scene. When dawn begins to dye the sky pink, I find a rural road, exhausted but determined. I keep moving until I spot a small town in the valley. I look for a payphone and dial Linda's number. "Hello?" Her sleepy voice brings me back to reality. "Linda, it is me." "Evelyn," I whisper, my voice hoarse from smoke and exhaustion. "Evelyn!" she exclaims. "Where are you? James is looking for you. We are worried sick." I am in. I look around, searching for some sign. A small town. I think it is Truckee. They tried to kill me. Linda. They burned the house down with me inside. My God. Her voice breaks. "Stay exactly where you are. James will pick you up. Look for the church in town and wait inside. It is the safest place." I follow her instructions, finding the small stone church in the main square. The priest, an older man with a compassionate gaze, asks no questions when I ask for refuge. He offers me water and a place to sit on a back bench away from curious eyes. An hour later, a man in his 60s with gray hair and a strong build enters the church. He heads directly toward me as if he knew me. "Mrs. Davis," he asks in a low voice, "I am James Miller, Linda's friend. I have come to take you to a safe place." I study his face, looking for signs of deceit, but his eyes convey honesty and determination. I show him Charles's pocket watch as the agreed signal with Linda. "Let us go," he says, offering me his arm. "Your daughter and son-in-law are giving interviews to the local press about the tragic loss of their mother in an accidental fire. The sooner we disappear, the better." We leave through a side door and get into a discreet sedan parked in an alley. While James drives skillfully through back roads, I tell him about all the forged documents, the overheard conversations, the plan to kill me. "It is not the first case I see," he comments, his somber face reflected in the rearview mirror. "In my last years as a detective, I investigated several suspicious accidents of wealthy seniors. I could never prove anything concrete, but I always suspected there was a pattern." They mentioned a doctor. "Norton," I say, "and an institution called New Horizons." James breaks sharply, looking at me with intensity. "Victor Norton." "Are you sure?" I nod. Richard spoke to him on the phone, confirming everything was ready for my accident. James hits the steering wheel with frustration. "I have been on Norton's trail for years. A brilliant ex-psychiatrist, he lost his license for falsifying mental evaluations, but disappeared before we could file formal charges. If he is involved, this is much bigger than we imagined." 3 hours later, we arrive at a farmhouse surrounded by vineyards. Linda waits for us at the door, her face a mix of relief and horror seeing my state. "Evelyn," she exclaims, hugging me tightly. "When I saw the news about the fire, I thought, I am alive," I say simply, tears finally flowing after hours of shock. "But my daughter tried to kill me." Linda guides me inside to a bathroom where I can clean the soot and dirt from my skin. While I bathe, I hear fragments of conversation between her and James. They are discussing strategies, contacts, necessary evidence. When I emerge dressed in clothes borrowed from Linda, they lead me to the kitchen where a cup of hot tea and homemade food wait for me. For the first time in days, without fear of being poisoned. "We have seen the news," Linda says softly. "You have been officially declared dead. The fire was so intense that supposedly no identifiable remains were left." Sarah gave a moving interview about losing her beloved mother and how they tried to rescue you without success. "The betrayal is a wound that hurts more than the burns and scratches covering my skin. Watching the images on the television of my daughter with carefully rehearsed tears, recounting how her confused mother probably caused the accident. It is almost unbearable." "What do we do now?" I ask finally. James spreads a map on the kitchen table. "Now, we fight back," he says with determination. "We have your testimony, the photos of the documents you took, and my files on similar cases. But we need more. We need to infiltrate their network, discover who else is involved, and expose them all. And for that," Linda adds, "we need the element of surprise. They believe you are dead. Evelyn, that is our greatest advantage." I look at the news one more time, my smiling face in an old photograph next to a somber headline. "Widow of tech tycoon Charles Davis dies in tragic fire." Sarah and Richard dressed in black receiving condolences. Charles's empire. My life, my identity, all usurped in a night of betrayal and fire. But while others see ashes, I see the first spark of justice. We will show them. I say, my voice acquiring a new firmness. We will show them that from these ashes comes not only pain, truth arises, and the truth, like fire, cannot be contained once it starts to burn. Dawn filters through the windows of Linda's house, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the air like little spirits. I have been here 3 days, recovering planning, processing the betrayal that has redefined my existence. My body is covered in scratches and minor burns from the escape through the tunnel, but it is the invisible wounds that hurt the most. Linda enters with a breakfast tray, fresh bred olive oil from her own trees steaming coffee. Her movements are gentle, as if she feared I might break with any sudden gesture. "You slept better," she observes. It is not a question, but a statement. I nod slightly. The nightmares are still there. The fire, the gas, Sarah's voice saying there will be nothing recognizable left, but at least now I can sleep more than 2 hours at a time. "The news keeps talking about your tragic death," Linda says, turning on the small television in the corner of the room. "Sarah and Richard have organized a funeral for tomorrow in San Francisco. Very elegant, very public. On the screen, I see images of my daughter dressed in rigorous mourning, receiving condolences in front of the cathedral. Her face is a perfect mask of contained grief. Richard at her side holds her hand with a protective gesture. A flawless performance. She was always a good actress, I murmur. Since she was little, she could cry at will to get what she wanted. Linda turns off the television and sits on the edge of the bed. James has been investigating, she says, changing the subject. What he discovered is disturbing. The door opens and James enters carrying a bulging folder. His face shows signs of fatigue, but his eyes maintain that determined intensity I have come to associate with him. "Good morning, Evelyn," he greets, placing the folder on the nightstand. "How are you feeling?" "Like someone who has survived her own murder," I reply with a bitterness I do not try to hide. "What have you found, James?" He spreads documents on the bed, photographs, newspaper clippings, official reports. The New Horizons Institution run by Dr. Norton officially exists as a counseling center for families with seniors suffering cognitive decline. He explains, "Its motto is, compassionate solutions for the care of our elders, but underneath that facade." He points to several photographs, men and women elegantly dressed, leaving a modern building in the city. I have identified at least 7 cases in the last 3 years that follow the same pattern. Wealthy elderly person, sudden diagnosis of cognitive decline, convenient accident. Inheritance quickly transferred to relatives who had previously consulted with New Horizons. I study the photographs, the reports. The similarities are chilling. How much money have they processed this way, I ask. "From what I have been able to track, more than $200 million, James replies. "And that is just what I have managed to identify." Linda picks up one of the photographs. An older woman smiling at a party. Mary Vance, 74 years old, widow of a prominent developer, fortune estimated at $45 million. She drowned in her pool after her nephew obtained power of attorney over her assets. The nephew had visited New Horizons 3 times in the previous month. James points to another photograph. A distinguished-looking man, Anthony Freeman, 77 years old, former president of a winery in Napa. His car went off the road in an accident after his youngest son was named sole heir. The son had hired Dr. Norton's counseling services. Each case is a variation of my own story. Each victim, someone like me. The difference is, I survived. "And the Dr. Norton?" I ask. "What do we know about him?" James extracts a separate file. Victor Norton, 58 years old, brilliant psychiatrist who lost his license 8 years ago for falsifying mental evaluations in a high-profile custody case. After that, he disappeared from the official radar, but it seems he found a more lucrative niche market. "We need concrete evidence linking Norton directly to these cases," Linda says. The lawyer in her emerging. "All this is circumstantial, convincing to us but not enough for a court. And we need to know who else is involved," I add. Sarah and Richard do not have the sophistication to orchestrate something like this alone. They mentioned a lawyer, Alexander Scott, and Dr. Foster, my supposed neurologist. There must be a whole network. James nods, gathering the documents. "We also need to protect you, Evelyn. If they discover you are alive, they will try to finish what they started." A heavy silence falls over the room. The reality of my situation hits me with renewed force. Legally dead, pursued by my own family, trapped in a web of conspiracy that extends beyond what I imagined. "So," I say finally, "what is the plan?" Linda and James exchange glances. "First, we need to establish a safe base for you," Linda replies. "You cannot stay here indefinitely. It is the first place they will investigate if they start to suspect. I have a friend, Manuel Ortiz, an ex-police colleague," James adds. "He has a house on the outskirts of Sacramento that he does not use except in summer. It is discreet, safe, and most importantly, has no connection to me that they can trace easily." "Meanwhile," Linda continues, "we will start gathering evidence. The photos you took of the documents are a good start, but we need more. Correspondence between Sarah, Richard, and Norton. Bank records showing payments. Anything that establishes an undeniable connection." I nod slowly, processing the plan. It makes sense, but something is missing. "All that will take time," I say. "And in the meantime, Sarah and Richard will be liquidating my assets, dismantling Charles's foundation, effectively erasing my life and his legacy. I get up from the bed, ignoring the pain in my muscles, and walk to the window. Linda's vines extend in orderly rows as far as the eye can see, each vine a testimony of patience and resilience. We need something to make them doubt, I say, watching my ghostly reflection in the glass. Something to make them wonder if I am really dead. That could be dangerous, James warns. If they suspect you survived, they will come looking for you. They already believe I am dead, and I am still in danger, I reply. At least if they doubt, they might make mistakes, and mistakes leave evidence. I turn to face them, an idea forming in my mind. What would happen if they received a sign? Something only I could send. Something that made them wonder if their perfect plan was not so perfect after all. Linda frowns, worried. Evelyn, I understand your frustration, but provoking them could be extremely risky. Life is risk, Linda, I respond. Charles always said in business, sometimes you have to bet big to win big. This is no different. James studies me carefully, his expression changing gradually from concern to consideration. It could work, he says finally, a small reminder, something subtle but unmistakable. It could destabilize them, make them make mistakes. Exactly. I nod, and while they wonder if their dead mother has returned to haunt them, we continue gathering evidence. Linda sighs, recognizing we are determined. If we are going to do this, it must be calculated. Nothing they can trace to here, nothing that reveals too much. I smile for the first time in days. I have exactly what we need. 2 hours later, we are sitting around Linda's kitchen table. In front of us is a sheet of special paper, the type Charles and I used to buy at a small artisan stationery shop in San Francisco. Handmade paper with a subtle lavender scent, an extravagance that became our signature for important notes. With a fountain pen Linda kept from her days as a lawyer, I write carefully, using my most distinctive handwriting, the one Sarah used to admire as a child. I did not forget the way home, Sarah. Simple, enigmatic, but unmistakably mine. I add a slight smudge of ash in the corner, using remains from the fire James collected discreetly from the burned property. Perfect, James says, examining the note. We will mail it from a town far away to distance any suspicion from here. Let us add this. Linda suggests taking out an old postcard of Lake Tahoe showing the house before the renovation. On the back, I write with the same handwriting. Remind me where it all started. Do you think it will work? Linda asks, as we seal the envelope. Sarah was always superstitious. I reply, as a child, she was convinced our house in the city was inhabited by her grandfather's spirit. If there is one thing that will destabilize her, it is the idea that her mother might be watching her from beyond the grave. James takes the sealed envelope. I will send it tomorrow, he says. Meanwhile, we will prepare your move to the safe house. It is not safe for you to remain here much longer. That night, while Linda and James finalize the logistical details, I sit on the back porch contemplating the stars. The sky here is different from the city, clearer, more honest in its vastness. I take out Charles's pocket watch and open it, running my thumb over the inscription inside. Time reveals all truths, with eternal love. Evelyn, I miss you. Charles, I whisper to the night air. I never imagined our daughter could do something like this. Where did we go wrong? The watch ticks softly in my hand, as if Charles were answering in his own way, a reminder that time keeps moving forward, inexorable, revealing truths even when we prefer not to see them. I close my eyes, and for the first time since the fire, I allow the tears to flow freely. I cry for the little girl Sarah once was, for the mother I tried to be, for the future we imagined together, and that is now so irrevocably altered. But when the tears dry, I feel something new emerging from the sadness, a steely resolution. I will not only survive this, I will expose the truth, for Charles, for me, and for all the other victims who did not have the chance to rise from their ashes. Early the next day, we leave for the Central Valley. James's friend Manuel welcomes us to a discreet farmhouse surrounded by old oak trees and vineyards. The property is isolated several miles from the nearest town with a breathtaking view of the foothills. No one will bother you here, Manuel assures us, a man in his 60s with the weathered skin of someone who has spent a life outdoors. The house has all the basics, and I will come to check on you every couple of days. Thank you for taking the risk, I tell him, conscious of the potential danger my presence represents. Manuel makes a dismissive gesture with his hand. James got me out of more than one tight spot when we worked together. Besides, he adds with a crooked smile, I have always enjoyed annoying rich folks who think they are above the law. We settle in quickly. The house is simple but comfortable with thick walls that keep the interior cool even in the valley heat. There are books, a radio, the essentials for a stay that could be prolonged. I will be back in 3 days, James says as he prepares to leave. By then, our little surprise will have arrived in San Francisco. Be careful, I warn him. Richard has contacts. If he starts to suspect, it could be dangerous. James nods, his expression grave. I am not easy to track, he replies, and I have my own contacts. Do not worry about me. Focus on recovering and helping us build the case. After James and Linda leave, I stay alone with my thoughts and the vastness of the landscape. The house is situated on a hill, offering panoramic views of fields stretching to the horizon. In the distance, the mountains are silhouetted against the sky, imposing and eternal. The following days, I establish a routine. In the mornings, I meticulously review the documents James left looking for patterns, connections, anything that can strengthen our case. In the afternoons, I walk among the trees, rebuilding my physical strength while my mind processes strategies. Manuel turns out to be unexpectedly pleasant company during his visits. Ex-cop turned farmer. He has a practical wisdom and dry humor I find comforting. My wife died 10 years ago, he tells me during one of his visits while we share a simple lunch. Cancer. Sometimes I think it was more honest than what they did to you. At least we got to say goodbye. I nod, understanding his point. Betrayal has many faces. I reply, my daughter's is just one of them. Do you hate her? He asks directly, his eyes evaluating me without judgment. The question stops me. Do I hate Sarah? The emotion I feel is so complex that no word seems adequate. I cannot completely hate someone I gave birth to, someone I held in my arms during feverish nights, someone I taught to read and ride a bike, I say finally. But I cannot forgive what she has done either. It is complicated. Manuel nods, satisfied with the honesty of my answer. Life is rarely black and white, he says, especially when it comes to family. On the third day, we receive James's call. His voice sounds tense, excited. The letter arrived. He announces without preamble. And the effect was even better than we expected. I have a contact at the security company that protects Sarah and Richard's house. They have installed additional cameras, they have hired extra guards, they are completely paranoid. How do you know it was because of the letter, I ask? Because Richard called Dr. Norton 5 times the same day they received it. He replies, my contact at the phone company confirmed the calls, and that is not all. He pauses dramatically. What else, I press? They have accelerated all their plans. They are liquidating properties at a frenetic pace, transferring assets to offshore accounts. They have scheduled an urgent meeting of the foundation board for tomorrow. They are panicking Evelyn. And people in a panic make mistakes. I feel a mix of satisfaction and alarm. If they are accelerating their plans, we must do the same. I say, what is next? Linda is working on the legal angle, James explains. She has contacts in the FBI Economic Crimes Unit who might be interested in the case if we present enough evidence. I am going to follow Richard when he visits Norton tomorrow. With luck, I will get concrete documentation of their collaboration. We need something irrefutable. I insist. Something not even the best lawyer can discredit. I know, James replies, and I think I know where to find it. But it is risky. What are you thinking, Norton's office, he says. If I could access his files, we would find everything we need. Client records, payments, the complete scheme. It is too dangerous. I object. If they catch you, they will not catch me. He interrupts me with confidence. I have experience in this type of unofficial reconnaissance. I remember Linda mentioned James had left the police force under circumstances not entirely clear. I begin to understand why. Be careful. That is all I say. I always am. He replies, and I can imagine his confident smile on the other end of the line. I will call you in 2 days with news. After hanging up, I stay contemplating the horizon from the window. The strategy is in motion. The pieces are moving. For the first time since the fire, I feel we are making progress. That night, a vivid dream wakes me up with a start. In it, I was back at the Tahoe house, but not the renovated and sterile version. The original one, warm and cozy. Charles was there sitting by the fireplace, glancing through one of his favorite books. I always built thinking of the future Evelyn. He told me in the dream, even when I did not know exactly what shape that future would take. I sit up in bed, my heart racing with a sudden clarity. The past and the future. The original house and the renovated one. Charles's words resonating in my mind. I turn on the lamp and search through the documents James left. I find the original blueprints of the Tahoe house, which Charles kept meticulously along with all his projects. I compare them with the recent photographs of the renovation. Something does not fit. The internal layout has changed significantly, but the exterior dimensions are identical. According to these blueprints, there should be more interior space than the new photographs show. I call James immediately, ignoring the time. "There is a hidden room," I say as soon as he answers, skipping the greetings. "In the Tahoe house. The renovation hid a room that does not appear in the new plans." "Are you sure?" he asks, instantly alert despite having been woken up. "Completely. Charles designed that house with a hidden security chamber, a space where he kept important documents, backups, even cash for emergencies. Sarah did not know. Only Charles and I knew of its existence. If that room survived the fire," James begins. "Exactly." I complete his thought. "It could contain exactly the evidence we need." Charles kept copies of everything. Contracts, correspondence, financial records, and most importantly, he installed a security recording system that we activated every time we left the house empty, which means it could have recorded Sarah and Richard planning the fire. James concludes, the excitement evident in his voice. If the system kept working after the renovation, and if the room was not destroyed by the fire, I stop, almost fearing to feed false hopes. I have to go there. James decides. The fire department has not released the property yet. It is still cordoned off as an investigation scene. That is good. It means Sarah and Richard have not been able to return either. It is dangerous. I warn, the place will not be structurally safe after the fire. I have been in worse places. He replies with a confidence I find both worrying and comforting. If that evidence exists, I will find it. 2 days later, Manuel informs me that James has called and wants to meet us at a neutral place, a small diner in a town halfway between the valley and the coast. We arrive before dawn. When the town is barely beginning to wake up, the diner is almost empty, except for a couple of truckers and the sleepy owner. James is already there at a back booth, looking exhausted but triumphant. As soon as we sit down, he places a small external hard drive on the table. "You were right," he says without preamble. The secret room survived almost intact. The fire affected mainly the upper floor and the east wing, the hidden chamber being built with fireproof materials and having its own ventilation system remained practically unharmed. I take the drive with trembling hands. "What is in here?" "Everything," he replies, a tired but satisfied smile lighting up his face. Security footage from the 3 days prior to the fire, digitized documents Charles kept as backup, and most importantly, audio recordings where Richard speaks clearly with Dr. Norton about the details of the accident and how to fabricate evidence of your alleged dementia. Emotion overwhelms me. It is more than we expected, more than we dared to dream. I also recovered this. James adds, handing me a small object wrapped in a handkerchief. I unwrap it carefully to reveal a small metal box. I recognize it immediately. The first gift Charles gave me when we started dating, an antique music box that played our song. It was in the secret room along with other personal belongings. James explains, "I thought you would want to have it." Tears blur my vision as I hold this fragment of my past life miraculously rescued from the ashes. "Thank you," I whisper, unable to express the depth of my gratitude. I am not finished. James continues, leaning forward. After recovering this, I went directly to see a contact in the Economic Crimes Unit, Isabel Ross, a brilliant investigator who has been on the trail of fraud cases against seniors for years. When I showed her what we had found, she could hardly believe it. "What did she say?" I ask. She said it is exactly what they needed for an investigation they have been building for years. Apparently, they have been following Norton and his network, but they could never gather enough evidence to proceed. They always managed to make them look like isolated accidents, unconnected family tragedies. Until now. Manuel adds understanding the magnitude of what we have discovered. Exactly. James nods. Isabel wants to meet with you, Evelyn, with all necessary precautions. Of course. She says your testimony combined with this evidence could be the key to dismantling the whole operation. A mix of emotions invades me: vindication, relief, anticipation, but also a deep pain that no legal victory can ever fully heal. When I ask simply, "Tomorrow, if you feel ready," James replies, "At a safe location she has arranged. Only those directly involved will know you are alive. For now." I nod, feeling the weight of the decision. I am ready. As we return to Manuel's house, I think about how fast things have changed. Just a week ago, I was trapped in a secret shelter while my own daughter tried to murder me. Now I am about to become the centerpiece of an investigation that could expose a high-level criminal network. The irony does not escape me. Sarah and Richard believed they were erasing me from existence, eliminating an inconvenient obstacle. Instead, they have transformed me into something much more powerful: a witness, a survivor, the voice of all the victims who could not escape the flames. Isabel Ross's office is located in a nondescript building on the outskirts of Sacramento, without external identification revealing its purpose. It could be a medical office or a low-profile law firm. This discretion, James explains as we approach, is deliberate. The Complex Crimes Unit often operates under the radar, especially when investigating powerful and influential people. Isabel is totally trustworthy, James assures while we wait in an austere meeting room. She has dedicated her career to pursuing those who prey on the vulnerable, and she has the tenacity of a bulldog when she finds a case she cares about. The door opens, and a woman in her 40s enters with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that seem to evaluate and catalog everything they see. She wears a dark gray suit with no ornaments or jewelry except a small pin on her lapel I recognize as the federal emblem. "Mrs. Davis." She greets me with a formal nod. "It is a privilege to meet you, although the circumstances are so extraordinary." Her handshake is firm, professional, but I detect genuine compassion in her gaze. "I appreciate you receiving us with such discretion." I reply, "Discretion is fundamental right now," Isabel says, taking a seat in front of us. "According to all official records, you are dead. That is a tactical advantage we must not waste." I nod, understanding perfectly. My apparent death is both a protection and a strategic tool. Isabel opens a meticulously organized folder. I have reviewed all the material James provided. She begins, "It is extraordinary. Not only does it document the assassination attempt against you, but it provides concrete connections to other cases we have been investigating." "How many cases are there?" I ask. Isabel exchanges a look with James before answering. "We have identified at least 22 suspicious deaths in the last 5 years that follow the same operational pattern: wealthy seniors, sudden diagnoses of cognitive decline, convenient accidents, rapid asset transfers, and in 16 of those cases, we have found connections to Dr. Norton's New Horizons institution." The magnitude of the operation leaves me breathless. How have they been able to operate so long without being discovered connections? Isabel responds bitterly. "Norton has powerful friends, ex-patients in positions of authority, grateful beneficiaries who now occupy positions in the judiciary, in politics, in the media. Furthermore, his method is meticulous. Each case, viewed individually, looks like a plausible family tragedy. Only when you examine them together does the pattern emerge." "And the deceased cannot testify," James adds somberly. "Until now." Isabel completes, looking at me intensely. "You, Mrs. Davis, are our first living witness, the only victim who has survived to tell her story. The weight of that responsibility settles on my shoulders." "What do you need from me exactly?" Isabel plays a video on her laptop. An elegant office, talking to a man in his 50s, perfectly combed hair and a professional smile that does not reach his eyes. Dr. Norton, I guess. This recording comes from the security system in the secret room at your Tahoe house, Isabel explains. It shows your daughter and son-in-law explicitly discussing the details of the plan to declare you mentally incapacitated and subsequently eliminate you in an accident. I watch the scene with a mix of horror and clinical fascination. Seeing my own daughter planning my death with such coldness is surreal, as if I were watching a particularly disturbing movie about strangers. Richard is nervous. I point out, noticing his gestures. Sarah is more determined. Isabel nods, impressed by my dispassionate observation. We have multiple recordings like this, she continues, along with the digitized documents from your husband and the photos you took before the fire. They constitute a solid case, but your personal testimony will be crucial. We need you to document chronologically everything. When you began to notice changes in your daughter and son-in-law's behavior, every suspicious conversation, every document you saw, and of course the events at the house before and during the fire. We also need you to identify everyone involved, James adds. Dr. Foster, your supposed neurologist. Alexander Scott, the lawyer who prepared the falsified documents. Any other name you remember? I nod, feeling strangely calm despite the situation. I will do it, but I have a condition. Isabel looks at me curiously. I want to face them personally, I say. Not just in court, but face to face. I want Sarah and Richard to see me alive, to know they failed before they are arrested. James starts to protest, but Isabel raises a hand to stop him. I understand your desire, she says, and in fact it could be tactically advantageous. A controlled confrontation, on our terms. It could provoke confessions or additional revelations. It is dangerous, James insists. If they find out prematurely that Evelyn is alive, they will not find out. Isabel interrupts him. We will organize it meticulously. A controlled scenario with undercover agents present. Mrs. Davis will appear only when we are ready to make the arrests. I lean forward, satisfied with the proposal. When can we proceed? We need at least a week to prepare everything. Isabel replies. Assemble the right teams, obtain the necessary warrants, coordinate with other units. This is not just about your daughter and son-in-law. Mrs. Davis, we are targeting the whole network, from Dr. Norton to the last accomplice. And in the meantime, I ask, in the meantime, you remain officially dead. Isabel says, you continue in the safe house, you work with us to document your testimony, and you have no contact with anyone outside this immediate circle. I nod, resigned to another week of ghostly existence. Isabel stands up, concluding the official meeting. There is something else you should know. She adds, her tone shifting subtly. We have been watching your daughter and son-in-law since James contacted me. There is a development that could complicate things emotionally for you. My stomach tightens with apprehension. What is it, Sarah? She is pregnant, Isabel says, watching my reaction carefully. About 3 months along, according to our sources. The news hits me like a physical blow. My daughter, who tried to murder me, is expecting a child. I would be a grandmother. The child would be born motherless if our plan succeeds. Are you sure, I ask, my voice barely audible. Isabel nods. She visited a private clinic last week. We have the records. A whirlwind of contradictory emotions invades me. Pain, confusion, an unexpected protective instinct toward a grandchild I will never know. Does this change your decision to proceed? Isabel asks cautiously. I take a deep breath, seeking clarity amidst the emotional confusion. No, I answer finally. Justice must prevail, for the other victims, for those who could not escape like me. Sarah's pregnancy is complicated, but it does not alter the facts. Isabel nods with approval. That is the right attitude. The judicial system will take her condition into account when determining the sentence, but it cannot exempt her from responsibility for attempted murder. As we leave the building, James watches me with concern. Are you okay? He asks when we are in the car. No, I answer honestly, but I will be. The following days pass in an intense routine. I spend hours with Isabel and her team documenting every detail of my experience, identifying suspects in photographs, reviewing evidence. It is emotionally exhausting to relive every moment of betrayal, but also strangely therapeutic, like draining an infected wound. At night in the solitude of the safe house, I allow myself to process the news of Sarah's pregnancy. She knew she was pregnant when she planned my death. Was that part of her motivation to secure the inheritance for her unborn child, or is it simply a cruel coincidence? On the 5th day of our meeting with Isabel, James arrives with urgent news. They have accelerated their plans. He announces, barely containing his agitation. Richard has scheduled an emergency meeting of the foundation board for tomorrow. According to our sources, they plan to vote to dissolve the Charles Davis Foundation and transfer all its assets to a new entity they will control completely. They cannot do that. I protest. The foundation's bylaws have specific protections against that type of action. Enough board members can be bribed or intimidated, James replies. And according to our intelligence, that is exactly what they have done. They have the majority vote secured. We must stop them. I say, feeling that Charles's most precious legacy is about to disappear. The foundation represents everything Charles valued: education, opportunities for underprivileged youth, responsible innovation. Isabel agrees, James assures. She has advanced the operation to tomorrow, coinciding with the board meeting. It is risky, but it is also our best chance to catch them all together. Sarah, Richard, Dr. Norton, Alexander Scott, and several corrupt board members. My heart races at the prospect. What is the plan? The meeting is scheduled for 11 in the morning at the foundation headquarters in San Francisco, James explains. Isabel has coordinated with tactical units to secure the building discreetly. Undercover agents will be present as service staff. When all targets are in the room, the agents will enter first, and I will enter after, when Isabel gives the signal. The impact of seeing you alive just when they think they have won could provoke spontaneous confessions or incriminating reactions. I nod, visualizing the scene. What do I need to do to prepare? James smiles slightly. I think you have been preparing for this moment since you escaped the fire. That night, while I pack the few belongings I have accumulated during my time as a ghost, I reflect on the journey I have undertaken, from victim to survivor, from prey to hunter. I take Charles's pocket watch, appreciating its comforting weight in my hand. Tomorrow the circle closes. Tomorrow the ashes of my previous life will give way to something new, something I cannot yet fully visualize. Wish me luck, Charles, I whisper, kissing the watch before putting it in my pocket. I do not know what awaits me after tomorrow. I do not know if I will be able to rebuild any kind of life after such betrayal. But I know one thing with certainty: the truth. Like fire, it cannot be contained once it starts to burn, and tomorrow everyone will feel its heat. The morning of the confrontation dawned with a clear sky over the bay, as if nature itself wanted to ensure nothing hindered the day of truth. The trip from the valley had been tense, with Isabel driving while James and I went over the final details of the plan. Remember, Isabel says as we approach the city, we follow the protocol exactly. You remain in the surveillance vehicle until you receive my signal. When you enter, go directly to the boardroom. Do not speak to anyone on the way. I nod, feeling a strange calm. I have imagined this moment so many times over the last few weeks that it almost feels like a well-rehearsed script. How is Sarah today, I ask, thinking of her pregnancy? According to our last report, she arrived early at the office. James replies, she seemed tense but determined. Richard arrived separately with Alexander Scott. Dr. Norton is scheduled to attend as a special consultant. San Francisco passes before my eyes, familiar and strange at the same time. The streets I walked for decades now seem to belong to another life, to another Evelyn. In a way they do. The Evelyn who knew these streets died in that fire. The one returning today is someone different, forged in the fire of betrayal. We stop in a side alley a block from the Charles Davis Foundation headquarters, a modern building that Charles designed personally, converting an old warehouse into a luminous space dedicated to innovation. Isabel hands me a discreet earpiece. With this, you will be able to hear what happens in the boardroom. When you hear my signal, operation complete, you will enter through the back door. An agent will escort you directly to the room. James squeezes my hand briefly. "You are doing the right thing, Evelyn." I remain alone in the surveillance van, watching through multiple screens images from strategically placed cameras. I see the board members arriving one by one, men and women of business, academics, public figures Charles selected carefully to guide his legacy. Some seem uncomfortable, others determined. I wonder how many have been bought or intimidated by Sarah and Richard. At 10:55, I see Sarah enter the building. She wears a sober black suit, the kind of outfit a recent widow might wear. Her face shows an expression appropriately solemn for someone who has just lost her mother, but I detect a glint of anticipation in her eyes. Richard follows closely. A bulging folder under his arm, talking animatedly with Alexander Scott, a thin man with glasses I vaguely remember from Charles's offices. Minutes later, a black town car stops in front of the building. From it emerges a man I recognize from the recordings, Dr. Victor Norton. His presence confirms today is not a simple business meeting. It is the culmination of their plan. Through the earpiece, I hear scattered conversations as the attendees take their places in the boardroom. Sarah's voice stands out, greeting each member by name, projecting an image of confidence and control. At 11 o'clock, the meeting officially begins. "Thank you all for attending on such short notice," Sarah says, her voice amplified by the room's microphone. "As you know, we are here to discuss the future of the foundation following the tragic loss of my mother. I hear murmurs of condolence, which Sarah accepts with measured gratitude. My mother would have wanted the foundation to continue its mission. But in a changing world, we must adapt. The proposal Richard and I present today will allow my parents' legacy to evolve to face the challenges of the 21st century." Richard takes the floor, his voice smooth but insistent. "What we propose is a complete restructuring," he explains. "The current foundation would be dissolved and its assets transferred to a new entity, the Future Davis Foundation. This new structure would allow us more agile management, less limited by outdated bylaws. Translation, less oversight, less restrictions on how to spend the money." I understand this directly contradicts Mr. Davis's stipulations. A voice I do not recognize intervenes. The bylaws specifically prohibit dissolution without unanimous board consent. Extraordinary circumstances require extraordinary measures. Richard responds smoothly. Dr. Norton, who is with us today, can attest to Evelyn's mental state in her final months. The decisions she made at the end of her life were compromised. Dr. Norton clears his throat and speaks with the practiced authority of someone used to his word being accepted without question. "Mrs. Davis suffered significant cognitive decline," he affirms. "In my professional opinion, any decision or restriction she imposed in her last years should be reconsidered in light of her condition. The audacity of the lie leaves me breathless. They are rewriting not just my death, but my entire mental life." The discussion continues, with Richard presenting legal documents prepared by Alexander Scott that supposedly declare me retrospectively incompetent. "As you can see," Scott says, "these documents clearly establish that Mrs. Davis was not in a condition to make binding decisions. This gives us legal grounds to reevaluate even the most restrictive clauses of the bylaws." Through the cameras, I see some board members exchanging uncomfortable glances, but no one openly challenges the narrative. "Let us proceed to the vote," Sarah announces. "The proposal is to dissolve the current Charles Davis Foundation and transfer all its assets and programs to the new Future Davis Foundation under the direction of Richard and myself as co-chairs." It is in that moment Isabel gives the signal. The undercover agents who had blended in with the staff reveal their badges simultaneously. The main door of the room bursts open and uniformed agents enter. FBI Isabel announces, her voice clear and authoritative. "Nobody move. Victor Norton, Richard Garcia, Sarah Davis, and Alexander Scott are under arrest for conspiracy, attempted murder, fraud, and forgery." Through the cameras, I watch the chaos that erupts in the room. Richard tries to reach for his phone, but is quickly immobilized. Dr. Norton remains perfectly still, his face a mask of calculation. Alexander Scott looks about to faint. And Sarah is frozen. her eyes fixed on Isabel as if she cannot process what is happening. "This is a mistake," she says, finally recovering some composure. "I do not know what you are talking about. We have all the evidence, Mrs. Davis," Isabel replies. "Recordings of your meetings with Dr. Norton where you explicitly planned your mother's murder, falsified documents, testimonies from accomplices who have already confessed." Sarah pales visibly but maintains her posture. "My mother died in a tragic accident," she insists. "Any other suggestion is absurd. It is my signal." The assigned agent escorts me from the van to the back entrance of the building. I walk through familiar corridors, feeling a strange disconnection, as if I were moving in a dream. When I arrive at the boardroom door, I pause for a moment, breathing deeply. Then I nod to the agent who opens the door. The silence that falls over the room when I enter is absolute. Every face turns toward me, expressions of shock, disbelief, even terror. Sarah is the first to react. Her face loses all color. Her lips part in a silent scream. She staggers, grabbing the edge of the table so she does not fall. "Hello, Sarah," I say, my voice strangely steady. "You look like you have seen a ghost." Richard is paralyzed, his mouth open in a perfect O of horror. Dr. Norton shows less surprise. His calculating eyes are already looking for exits, explanations, legal defenses. "This is impossible," Sarah whispers finally. The fire. We saw." "Saw what exactly?" I ask, advancing toward the table. "The fire you started, the door you locked while I was inside. Or maybe you refer to when Richard said, 'I hope you like fire before leaving me to die.'" The board members gasp collectively, looking at Sarah and Richard with growing horror. "You do not understand." Sarah tries, her voice trembling. "You were sick, confused. You could not handle. I was perfectly lucid." I interrupt her. "Lucid enough to find the documents in Richard's office where you planned my death. Lucid enough to record your conversations with Dr. Norton. Lucid enough to escape the fire you prepared." "Mrs. Davis," Isabel intervenes, addressing Sarah. "We have security footage from the Tahoe house clearly documenting how you and your husband set the fire. We have accomplice testimonies, financial records of payments to Dr. Norton, falsified documents prepared by Mr. Scott. Your plan has been completely exposed." Sarah looks at Richard, looking for support, but he is already crumbling. "It was Norton's idea," Richard blurts out suddenly. "He contacted us after reading about the foundation. He said he had a program for families with wealthy seniors who needed smooth transitions. The whole plan was his." "Shut up, you idiot," hisses Dr. Norton, "but it is too late. He showed us other cases." Richard continues desperately, people who had resolved similar situations. He said it was completely safe, that no one would ever suspect. Sarah looks at me, a mix of fear and something else in her eyes. Shame, regret. "It is impossible to tell, Mom," she says softly, using that title for the first time in years. "You do not understand. I was pregnant. We needed security for the baby. You were always controlling everything. You never let us." "No," I cut her off firmly. "Do not use my grandchild as an excuse for trying to murder me." The word grandchild makes her face contract. "How I know many things, Sarah," I reply. "I know you are 3 months pregnant. I know you planned my death weeks in advance. I know you falsified medical documents to declare me insane. I know you paid Dr. Norton $500,000 for his specialized services. Every revelation is like a physical blow." Sarah collapses in her chair, defeated. Isabel makes a gesture, and the agents proceed to formally handcuff the 4 main suspects. The scene is surreal. My daughter, my son-in-law, a respected doctor, and a prominent lawyer, all in chains and being read their rights in the boardroom of the foundation Charles built with so much love. As they lead them out of the room, Sarah stops in front of me. "I am sorry," she says, although I cannot discern if she regrets the attempted murder or simply having failed. "I am too." I reply, feeling the weight of all the decisions, all the dysfunctional family dynamics that brought us to this point. For the child. It is the only thing I can offer her. Not forgiveness, not understanding, just an acknowledgement of the innocent life trapped in this tragedy. When they are gone, I stay alone with the stunned members of the board, these men and women who knew Charles, who worked with him, who supposedly watched over his legacy. Some of you knew, I say, looking at each one. Some suspected but said nothing. Others, perhaps, were genuinely deceived. But from now on, the foundation will return to its original purpose. Charles's legacy will continue as he designed it. An older woman I recognize as Dr. Martinez, a former university colleague of Charles, stands up with tears in her eyes. "Evelyn," she says, "we had no idea. It is a miracle you are alive." "It was not a miracle," I reply. "It was foresight." Charles built a secret shelter in that house years ago, just in case. He never specified what case he feared, but thanks to his prudence, I am here today. I leave the room with my head held high, escorted by James. In the lobby, the media has already gathered, alerted by the police. Camera flashes explode when they see me, and a murmur of astonishment runs through the crowd. "Are you ready for this?" James asks discreetly. "You do not have to talk to them now." I consider the question. Part of me yearns for privacy, time to process everything that has happened. But another part, the part that has emerged from the ashes of my old life, recognizes the importance of this moment. I am ready, I say. The truth deserves to be heard, and as I approach the microphones, I feel the weight of Charles's watch in my pocket. A reminder that even in our darkest moments, time keeps moving forward, carrying us toward a future we perhaps cannot see but can face with dignity and truth. The courtroom of the Superior Court in San Francisco holds a solemn silence while Judge Ramsey reviews the final documents. The high windows allow the California light to flood the space, drawing golden rectangles on the polished wood floor. 3 months have passed since the arrests, and today the trial finally begins. I sit in the front row next to Linda, who has formally assumed my legal representation. Her presence calms me. After decades defending human rights cases, she knows how to navigate these turbulent waters better than anyone. "Remember," she whispers, "just answer exactly what they ask you. Do not elaborate. Do not ramble. The evidence speaks for itself." I nod slightly. In these months, I have learned to contain my emotions, to maintain composure, even when everything inside me screams. Today will be no different. The side door opens and the defendants enter, escorted by guards. First, Dr. Norton, impeccable even in these circumstances, his face a mask of professional dignity. Then Alexander Scott, nervous, thinner than when I last saw him. Richard follows carefully, avoiding looking in my direction. And finally, Sarah. Her pregnancy is evident now. Almost 6 months. She wears a sober navy dress, her hair pulled back in an austere bun. She looks pale, exhausted. For an instant our eyes meet, and I see something in her eyes I cannot fully decipher. Shame, resentment, a vestige of the girl I once raised. Judge Ramsey bangs his gavel, calling the court to order. Court is in session in the case of the People versus Norton, Garcia, Davis, and Scott on charges of attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation of the elderly. District Attorney Victoria Sands, a woman in her 50s with a formidable reputation, rises for her opening statement. Her voice is clear, incisive. "Your Honor, this is not simply a case of family greed. What the court will see in the coming days is evidence of a sophisticated criminal network that has been operating for years, methodically selecting wealthy seniors, isolating them falsely, declaring them incapacitated, and eliminating them when they became obstacles to their financial plans." As she details the operation, I see several jurors shudder visibly. The prosecutor projects a presentation showing previous victims, smiling faces of men and women who did not have my luck, who did not escape the fire, the water, the carefully orchestrated accidents. But this time, she continues, they made a crucial mistake. They underestimated Evelyn Davis. All eyes turn to me for a moment. I keep my expression serene, although I feel the weight of their attention. Defense attorneys present their opening arguments next. Dr. Norton's lawyer tries to characterize him as a dedicated, misunderstood physician whose unorthodox methods sought only to help families in crisis. Alexander Scott portrays him as a simple legal technician who did not know the final purpose of the documents he prepared. Richard's defender adopts a different strategy, suggesting his client was manipulated by both Dr. Norton and his wife, portraying him as a weak man, trapped in circumstances he did not fully understand. But it is Sarah's defense that affects me most. Her lawyer, a young man with compassionate eyes, describes her as a victim of her circumstances. A woman who grew up without enough parental attention, whose father was obsessed with his tech empire, and whose mother prioritized the foundation over parenting. Sarah Davis. He argues, grew up in the shadow of her parents' fortune, never feeling valued enough for herself. Only as heir to a legacy she did not choose. I force myself to keep my expression neutral, though every word is like a needle. This is how Sarah sees me. As an absent mother concerned only with money and legacy. Charles and I worked tirelessly. It is true, but we always believed we were doing it for her, to build her a secure future. The first day of the trial concludes with technical presentations of evidence. On the second, the testimonies begin. Dr. Foster, my supposed neurologist, is the first to testify, confessing he falsified my evaluations under pressure from Dr. Norton, who threatened to reveal old medical errors. On the third day, they call me to the stand. As I walk to the front of the room, I feel Sarah's gaze following me, intense, undecipherable. I take the oath and take my seat, preparing to relive publicly the worst betrayal of my life. The prosecutor guides me methodically through the events. The first suspicions, the discovered documents, the invitation to Tahoe, the fire, my miraculous escape. I answer with clarity and precision, without excessive emotion, allowing the facts to speak for themselves. Mrs. Davis, the prosecutor asks finally, in your opinion, what was the ultimate goal of the defendants? I consider my answer carefully. To eliminate me to access my fortune and control of the Charles Davis Foundation without the restrictions I had established to protect my husband's legacy. Dr. Norton's lawyer is the first to cross-examine me, trying to suggest I misinterpreted innocent conversations, that the accident was exactly that, a tragic accident from which the defendants tried to save me without success. I keep my testimony firm, pointing to the physical evidence, the recordings, the documents that leave no room for alternative interpretations. Sarah's defender adopts a different approach, more personal. Mrs. Davis, how would you describe your relationship with your daughter during her childhood? Linda stands up immediately. Objection, Your Honor. Irrelevant to the charges at hand. I am establishing emotional context, Your Honor. The lawyer argues. Crucial to understanding my client's motivations. I will allow the question. The judge decides. But stay focused on what is relevant to this case. I take a deep breath before answering. I loved my daughter deeply. Charles and I worked hard to provide everything she needed. Education opportunities, financial security, and time. The lawyer presses, did you provide time? Attention, emotional presence. I feel a lump in my throat. We did the best we could balancing our professional responsibilities with family. Perhaps we did not always get that balance right, but our intentions are not the same as actions, right, Mrs. Davis? He interrupts. Did you know your daughter kept a diary during her adolescence where she wrote repeatedly that she felt invisible to her parents? Linda objects again, but the damage is done. The strategy is clear. Humanize Sarah. Present her as a product of emotional neglect, not as a calculating criminal. When they finally allow me to leave the stand, my legs tremble slightly. Seeing my family life dissected publicly, turned into an excuse for attempted murder, is more painful than I anticipated. The following days bring more testimonies. James presents the evidence recovered from the secret room in Tahoe. Isabel details the investigation linking Dr. Norton to at least 17 similar suspicious deaths. Financial experts track the flow of money from previous victims to offshore accounts controlled by Norton and his associates. In the second week of the trial, Sarah unexpectedly requests to testify. Her lawyer seems surprised, but does not object. As she walks to the stand, her hand instinctively protects her prominent belly. I want to speak in my own words. She begins, her voice softer than I remembered. Not to justify the unjustifiable, but to explain how I got to this point. The room holds an absolute silence as Sarah describes her childhood as the daughter of brilliant but distant parents, always overshadowed by Charles's legacy, always feeling she had to earn the love other children received unconditionally. When I met Richard, she continues, For the first time, I felt someone saw me. Not the Davis name, not the heiress, just Sarah. She describes how gradually Richard began to point out the injustices of her financial situation, how Dr. Norton appeared in their lives offering solutions to release the potential that was being repressed by my control over the family fortune. He convinced me my mother was deteriorating mentally. She says, tears sliding down her cheeks, that it was an act of compassion to spare her the humiliation of a public decline, that the accident would be quick, painless, dignified. Her words hit me hard. She really convinced herself she was doing me a favor by murdering me. But when I saw her in the boardroom alive, her voice breaks. I saw the magnitude of what I had done. To the person who gave me life, whom I tried to... There is no possible forgiveness for that. I am not looking for it. I just want her to understand that the Sarah who did this is not the daughter she raised. It is someone I became out of weakness, out of resentment, out of letting myself be manipulated. She looks directly at me for the first time. I am sorry, Mom. Not for the consequences I face, but for the pain I caused you. For betraying everything you and Dad taught me. Tears flow freely now, and I must fight the impulse to go to her to comfort her, as I did when she was little. But that little girl no longer exists, and this woman, no matter how sorry she is, now tried to kill me. The trial continues for 3 more weeks. Finally, the jury retires to deliberate. The wait is unbearable. Linda James and I drink coffee in a small cafe near the courthouse, trying to distract ourselves with trivial conversations that inevitably return to the case. "Whatever happens," Linda says, squeezing my hand across the table, "you have won, Evelyn. You survived. You exposed the truth. You saved future victims." "I know," I reply. But I cannot help wondering if I could have done something different as a mother, if I could have prevented Sarah from taking this path. James shakes his head. "Do not blame yourself. I have seen enough cases to know people make their own decisions. Sarah had options. She chose the wrong one. When the jury returns after 2 days, the courtroom is packed. Journalists, relatives of other victims, legal observers, all anxious for the verdict in what has become one of the most high-profile cases of the decade. The judge requests silence, and the jury foreman stands holding a paper trembling slightly in his hands. In the case against Victor Norton, we find the defendant guilty on all counts. A murmur runs through the room. Norton remains impassive, as if he had anticipated this result. In the case against Alexander Scott, we find the defendant guilty of forgery, conspiracy, and fraud. Scott slumps visibly in his seat. In the case against Richard Garcia, we find the defendant guilty of attempted murder, conspiracy, and fraud. Richard closes his eyes as if he wanted to disappear from the room, from the world. In the case against Sarah Davis, the foreman pauses briefly. We find the defendant guilty of attempted murder and conspiracy, with a recommendation for leniency due to her cooperation and mitigating circumstances. Sarah receives the verdict with dignity, a single tear sliding down her cheek as she nods slightly, accepting the justice she sought. The judge proceeds to hand down sentences: 30 years for Norton, 15 for Richard, 10 for Scott, and 12 for Sarah, with the possibility of parole after 8, considering her pregnancy and cooperation. When the guards escort the convicts out of the room, Sarah stops briefly in front of me. "The baby will be born in prison," she says softly. "It is a boy. I was going to call him Charles, after Dad." I do not know what to answer. This child, my grandson, will be born in the shadow of his parents' crimes, carrying a legacy he did not ask for, just as Sarah felt she carried Charles's. "It is a good name," I say finally. Sarah nods and continues her path, her future now defined by bars and strict schedules, separated from the fortune she coveted so much. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowd anxious for statements. Linda acts as a barrier, allowing me to advance toward the waiting car. "Mrs. Davis," a journalist shouts, "how do you feel seeing your daughter convicted?" I stop considering the question. The answer is too complex for a quick statement, but I feel the need to say something, not for the media, but for myself. Justice brings no satisfaction when it involves your own blood. I reply finally. It only brings the opportunity to rebuild, to heal, to find a new path. That is what I will try to do now, 6 months after the trial. I return to Tahoe. Spring has transformed the landscape where before there were ashes. Now new grass sprouts. The charred structure of the house has been removed, leaving only the stone foundation and an open space that seems to wait, patient, for a new purpose. Linda accompanies me. As she has done faithfully throughout this process, James will join us later. He is currently in Sacramento testifying in related trials against other accomplices of Norton's network that continue to emerge. "Are you sure about this?" Linda asks as we contemplate the land. "You could just sell it. Leave the memories behind." I shake my head. Charles always said places absorb our stories. This place knows both the best and the worst of my family. It deserves the chance to be part of a new story. The architects will arrive tomorrow with preliminary plans. I will not rebuild the house as it was, nor like the pretentious renovations Sarah and Richard created. In its place, something completely new will rise. A support center for survivors of financial abuse and exploitation of the elderly. The Phoenix Foundation. I have named it in honor of that sinister folder I discovered in Richard's office, but redefined as a symbol of rebirth and resilience. Linda and I walk among the old trees that survived the fire, their trunks blackened, but their branches green again, loaded with new growth. I received another letter from Sarah. I comment as we sit on a makeshift bench. Linda looks at me curiously, but without judgment. She knows I have visited Sarah in prison 3 times since little Charles's birth 4 months ago. "How is she different?" I reply, seeking the right word. More reflective. The therapy program seems to be helping her understand her actions, her motivations. I do not mention that every visit is painfully difficult, an impossible balance between the maternal love I still feel and the betrayal I can never fully forget. And the child. An involuntary smile draws on my face, growing strong. Social services have placed him with a wonderful foster family. Retired educators, they allow them to bring the baby for weekly visits. I have not requested custody. At 69, with everything that happened, it would not be fair to the little one. But I have established a trust for his education and needs, and I keep informed about his development. Last week I held his little hands. I continue. He has Charles's eyes, observant, curious. He looked at me as if trying to decipher me. Linda smiles with sympathy. Children have a wisdom we lose with the years. They do not carry our prejudices or our wounds. The sun begins to descend, casting elongated shadows over the foundations of what will be the new building. In the distance we hear the engine of a vehicle approaching. James. Punctual as always, he joins us bringing news from the Capitol. Norton's network turns out to be more extensive than we initially imagined. Doctors, lawyers, officials who facilitated or covered up the deaths of at least 23 seniors across the state. "Your case has opened the floodgates," James explains. Victims who survived but were afraid to speak. Families who suspected but had no proof. Everyone is coming forward now. It is as if your voice gave them permission to break the silence. This is perhaps the most significant victory. Not just justice for me, but for all those who could not defend themselves, who became statistics, convenient accidents for greedy families. At dusk, we light a small bonfire near where the main fireplace used to be. It is not a planned ritual, but something that arises organically as the 3 of us contemplate the future of the space. To Charles. I say, raising a glass of wine toward the emerging stars, who always knew how to build things that last. To the truth, Linda adds, which always finds its way to the light. To the survivors, James concludes, those who are with us and those who live in our memory. The fire crackles softly. Nothing like the devouring inferno that almost ended my life, but a warm, controlled, beneficial presence. It reminds me that fire, like many forces in life, can destroy or purify, depending on the hands that guide it. Early the next morning, I receive an unexpected visit. Isabel Ross, the investigator who coordinated the arrests, appears at our makeshift camp with a box of documents. "I thought you would want to see this personally," she says after greeting us. "We have completed the analysis of all cases linked to Norton. Among the identified victims, we found this." She hands me an old photograph of a smiling man in his 70s, next to a younger woman whom I recognize immediately as Richard's mother. William Sanders, Isabel explains. Richard's stepfather, who raised him since he was 10. He died in a car accident 3 years before Richard met Sarah. He inherited a considerable sum, which, according to our investigations, he used to establish himself in social circles where he eventually met your daughter. The revelation leaves me stunned. Richard not only participated in the attempt to murder me, he had learned the method by killing his own stepfather. Does Sarah know this? I ask finally. Isabel shakes her head. We are still documenting the evidence, but given her cooperation, we consider she has the right to know the full truth about the man she married. I wonder how this information will affect Sarah already dealing with the weight of her own actions. Will she feel relief knowing she was manipulated by someone with experience in this type of crime? Or will it deepen her feeling of having been betrayed by everyone she trusted? Isabel leaves shortly after leaving me with new complexities to process. The story I thought I knew keeps revealing additional layers, reminding me we rarely have the complete picture of the lives around us. That afternoon, while the architects spread blueprints on makeshift tables, I make a decision. The center will include a space dedicated specifically to research and education on patterns of financial abuse and exploitation, an archive that will document cases, identify warning signs, and provide resources for those who suspect they are at risk. We will call it the Charles Davis Archive, I tell Linda, because he always believed knowledge was the best protection. As the sun descends again over the mountains, I contemplate the foundations of what is to come. The house where I was once happy, where they subsequently tried to kill me, will transform into a beacon of hope and protection for others. I take out Charles's old pocket watch. Its constant ticking a reminder that time keeps moving forward, transforming even our worst experiences into opportunities to create something meaningful. I do not know what the next few years will bring. I do not know how my complex relationship with Sarah will evolve or what role I will have in little Charles's life. I do not know how many more victims of Norton and his accomplices will find justice thanks to our efforts. But I know this. Ashes are fertile. From the most complete destruction can emerge a new, unexpected, even beautiful life. Charles understood this. That is why he built secret shelters. That is why he documented everything meticulously. That is why he taught me to look forward even in the darkest moments. And while the twilight dyes the mountains purple and gold, I feel a peace I thought lost forever. It is not a naive peace. It is interwoven with threads of pain, loss, and betrayal, but also with threads of truth, justice, and possibility. From the ashes of my previous life has emerged a different glory, not intact, not without scars, but perhaps wiser, more compassionate toward human fragility, more aware of our capacity for both harm and healing. And as the first stars appear in the night sky, I make a silent promise, both to those I have lost and those who will come after, that these ashes will not be the end of the story, but the fertilizer for something new and valuable that, like the mythical phoenix, will rise to begin again. 2 years later, the Phoenix Foundation officially opens its doors. The building, a modern structure of wood and glass that integrates harmoniously with the mountain landscape, stands out as a symbol of transformation. At the opening ceremony, survivors of financial abuse share their stories, while experts discuss new legislation inspired partially by our case. Sarah watches the broadcast from the prison library. According to her weekly letter, her sentence has been reduced for good behavior and continuous cooperation with authorities. In 3 more years, she could be eligible for parole. Our conversations, initially tense and painful, have evolved into something more reflective. There is no complete forgiveness. Some wounds are too deep, but there is a mutual recognition of the damage caused and a shared desire to build something better from the ruins. Little Charles, now a lively 2-year-old, visits me occasionally accompanied by his foster family. He does not call me Grandma. That is a privilege I have not sought, but his eyes light up when he sees me, and his little hands hold on to mine trustingly as we explore the olive grove together. Linda has assumed legal direction of the foundation, ensuring every program fulfills not only the letter, but the spirit of protection we imagined. James, although officially retired, continues to advise us on security and prevention, converting decades of investigative experience into protocols that save lives. As for me, I have found an unexpected purpose as a spokesperson for survivors. My story of betrayal, survival, and reconstruction resonates with many who have experienced similar losses. I am not a natural speaker, but there is power in authenticity, in showing both the scars and the strength I developed while healing. This afternoon, while I walk the halls of the center, I look at framed photographs on the walls. Charles in his youth dreaming of changing the world through technology. Us together the day we inaugurated the original foundation. Moments of our family life that despite everything contained genuine love. Among them I have added a new image. The original Tahoe house before the fire, not as a monument to what was lost, but as a reminder that our safest places can become dangerous, and our greatest losses can lead us to unexpected discoveries. The path that brought me here was cruel, painful beyond imagination. I would never have chosen it. But being here, seeing lives transformed, people protected, justice served, I cannot deny that even our worst experiences can eventually serve a greater purpose. As the sun sets over the mountains, I sit at the viewpoint we have built where the main living room used to be. I take out Charles's old watch, now restored and working perfectly, and read once more the inscription that has guided my path. Time reveals all truths. With eternal love, Evelyn. The truth has been revealed, painful but necessary, and love, although transformed by the fire of betrayal, persists in ways I would never have anticipated. Not the naive love of before, but something more resilient, tempered by adversity, like steel forged in flames. I look toward the horizon where the mountains are silhouetted against the evening sky. The future as always remains unknown, but for the first time in a long time, I contemplate it without fear, because I have learned the most important lesson, that even when everything seems lost, when flames consume what we love, something essential remains, something that cannot be burned, drowned, or buried: the truth, the memory, the human capacity to begin again, and from the ashes always the possibility of flight.